We are a group called Columbus Kimono. We're located here in Columbus. We provide educational opportunities to the public to teach them about traditional Japanese dress and some other aspects of traditional Japanese culture. In the past 5 years or so, we've been doing a lot of informational panels at some of the local conventions that are here in town. We've also worked with the Japanese student organization at OSU to put on events for them. We've spoken with the Ohio Artists Council at one point about dyeing and weaving techniques that are involved in wearing kimono. Today, though, we're just going to do a short presentation, and we're actually going to teach you how to dress in yukata, which is sort of like a basic version of kimono. A yukata is something that you would totally wear to a Tanabata festival, summer festival, fireworks. It's very casual, and it's a lot easier to dress in. There's less things that you need to wear it and put it on. With the yukata, you essentially have two major parts in it. You have the yukata itself, and they're typically made of cotton. Sometimes you can find them made out of linen or hemp, but cotton's pretty standard. And then you have the obi that goes with it. And then some various ties and some other things in there. But it's really, really pretty easy. You usually wear like a white cotton slip underneath of it. There are specially made like actual Japanese slips like this, or you can wear like a white tank top and white shorts or something like that. You just definitely want to have something between your skin and your actual yukata, especially if it's a vintage one, because some of the dyes can bleed out. I'll tell you a little bit about the yukata that Kat is wearing. This is an indigo colored indigo dye, and this is very, very traditional. A lot of the newer yukata that you're seeing on the market now, they're very, very, very girly. A lot of pink, a lot of purple, a lot of sparkles, like big flowers, things like that. Nice. But this is a more traditional one, and these little birds on here, these are clovers or chidori. They're a very common summer motif. And then about mine, just a little bit, the flower patterns I have on mine are hydrangea, which is another late spring to early summer motif. Occasionally you will find the odd yukata that has a completely out of seasonal print on it, like snowflakes, penguins, and it's just sort of, the idea behind that is just to give it sort of a cool feeling. You know, it's hot, it's summertime, you know, look at the pretty, you know, snowflakes, makes you think of the cool winter and helps cool you down. So go ahead and hold it up all the way. You'll notice that it's very, very long, and this is indicative of women's kimono or yukata, and that is so that you can fold it over at the waist. It's a little hard to see, but you have this fold right here, and that way you can adjust the height of it and put it on different people, essentially, if you're a little taller, a little shorter, and so they can kind of be passed between generations, you know, mother to daughter, things like that. And ideally, it should be about as tall as you are. So you want the top of the kimono or yukata to come up to your head and about hit the floor so that you can get the right amount of fold here. So she's going to go ahead and put that on again. Really, for yukata, you really only need 2 ties, and these are called himo, but anything works. You can use ribbon, you know, pieces of fabric, make your own. Nobody's going to see these, so you can kind of fudge them, but they're literally just pieces of fabric. So you're going to need 2 of them, and she's going to adjust that so that it gets just kind of right about at her ankle length, and you pull it up in front of you like this, and then you usually will take the right side first and wrap it over and check your length and see how far it comes over. Ideally, it should come over to the edge of your hip. And then take the left side over. And you can kind of angle it up a little bit. That sort of keeps the kimono closed or yukata closed. And sometimes it does take a little bit of fiddling. It's a lot easier to practice this if you have a mirror in front of you. So she's going to take the kimono and then she's going to tie that kind of tie it higher. She's going to tie it around her waist a couple of times and just make sure it's snug. You don't want it to be so tight that it's uncomfortable, but because the cotton is a natural fabric, things tend to move around. You do want it to be tight enough so that it's not going to come untied. She's also tying it kind of off to the side so that when she puts her obi on, she's not going to have a knot right in the middle, like pushing into her stomach. Well, she doesn't have a knot because she's special. But you can knot it or you can wrap it around. The chemo that are natural fabrics, cotton, things like that tend to kind of stick together. So that can be helpful, especially if you're just learning to dress. Actual silk kimono can be very slippery and very frustrating to try and put on by yourself if you've never done it before. So I definitely recommend that if you find this interesting and you think it might be something you want to get into, definitely start with a yukata. It will save you a lot of time, a lot of grief, a lot of tears. Always left over right. You always, always, always cross your colors left over right. If you do it the other way, that's kind of insulting. It's just, you're dead, basically. The only time that kimonos ever cross that way is for funerals. So you always cross the colors left over right. She's got in her fold here, and she's got her little chemo sticking out, but that's not a huge deal. You can kind of go in and like tuck that up under afterwards. And what you want to do is you've got this front part, you want to kind of come in the front and like push everything down because you want this line along the bottom. This is your okashori, this little fold. You want it to be as straight and as neat as possible. And it's kind of nice too because it gives you sort of a top and skirt effect rather than just like one long piece like a dress. So then you're going to take another chemo, your second one, and you're going to tie it kind of just under the bust or a little lower, kind of depending on where it's comfortable for you. While she's doing that, I just want to make a side note that men's kimono and yukata are much simpler than this. They don't take as much to put on. They don't take as many accessories. And you'll notice that my sleeves in the back are open. Men's kimono do not have the sleeves open in the back. So that's a good way to tell if you're looking at one, whether it's a men's or a woman's piece. Check out the sleeves. That's like your number one thing. Men's kimono and yukata tend to be a lot more somber. They tend to be darker colors. Dark blue, dark gray, dark green, and brown. And even men's yukata tend to be like a lot less flashy. So you kind of, make sure everything's even. Your back is not so important, especially with yukata. If you're going to have like kind of a big bow back here, covered all up, you definitely want this front part to be as straight. So then you have your obi. I know, it's great. It looks all bundled up like that. And as you can see, it's very, very long. This is going to go around your waist twice. And this is a very casual obi. This is really simple. It's an obi called kakata. It's just the way it's woven together, basically. And it's very informal too. You'll also notice that it's fairly narrow. With more formal obi, they tend to be wider, and then you fold them in half to get the correct width around you, which is also kind of another good thing because you can fold it a little differently if you need it a little wider, if you need it a little narrower, depending on how you're built. And men's obi are actually thinner than this. They're not nearly as wide, but they're just about as long. You want to wrap it around a couple of times before you do your tie in the back. So she's going to show you how to tie one of these. And she's going to do it in the front, and then she's going to move it around to the back. This is probably one of the easiest ways to learn because you can sit and look at yourself in a mirror and see what you're doing. And it's not too difficult to turn it around in the back, especially with the yukata, because you don't have a lot of other stuff going on underneath. So, ready? Okay, go ahead and turn. So you wrap this around yourself. You turn, you can have a friend help you. Having a friend is always nice because they see things that you miss and they can help you pull your sleeves out and whatnot. It's always funner with the money anyway. So she's wrapped it around herself twice, and then she has this little tail sticking out at the top, which she's folded in half. And you can kind of adjust it as needed to. When you're first learning, it's really easy to get this too long or too short, and then it's harder to make your bow or whatever other type of obi-musubi out of the different types of knots. So then, after that, you're going to take this longer piece and kind of fold that up on the side right here so it lays nice and straight. And then you're going to tie that smaller take that short piece out and you're going to wrap it over. And there's going to be a little hole in the back where you did that knot. And you pull that middle piece up through the end. And tie it. Pull it tight. Yep, pull it tight. Make sure it's good. You don't want your bow falling apart on you. And then you're going to take it around one more time and then stick it behind your 2 layers. And she currently doesn't have anything stiffening her obi right now, so we'll stick that in here in a minute. And then you kind of play with it. You know, you can make it stand straight up, you can put it down, you can twist it, you can have one side up, one side down. But this is really, really super common, this sort of bow or bow style. You can even find simple, easy obi where these 2 parts are different, are not connected. So you would just have this part which you would wrap around your waist and tie, and then you would have a bow kind of on it's like a stick, a piece of wire that you can stick down in the back. So there's ways to cheat. It's not super intimidating if you don't want to get into it that much. It can take a little bit to learn, to try and figure out where your hand is going, and why is this here? But it's like anything else, it's just with practice. It's totally possible to dress yourself, especially in yukata. So then what she's going to do is she's going to turn this around and she's going to go left with it because that's the way her collar is going. You don't want to turn it the other way because then you're going to pull your collar open. Yeah, pull it around to the right. Not the left, sorry. And you just kind of slide it around the back. It's pretty easy. And then turn. So she's got a little bit of her chemo sticking out here. You just tuck that in under. And then you want this fold as well to be like kind of peeking out under the bottom, like all the way around. So then you've got kind of one last piece, and this is optional depending on the type of obi you have. Her obi is pretty floppy, so it's going to need something in the front to keep it nice and neat and crisp looking. And this is an obi stiffener or an obi shin. There's several names for it, but it's basically a piece of plastic with some fabric on it. There's really nice ones, really expensive ones. Some of them have ties so that you can put it on and tie it. This one is kind of just slip in. So she's just going to slip that. Are you going to put it between or in the back? So she's just going to slip that between the first layer of her obi and the last layer. Now the obi I'm wearing is actually pretty stiff. It's pretty thick, so I really don't need a stiffener too much in it. But this is why mirrors get too. So you can stick that in. And that's basically it. It's really not super complicated. But when you're wearing something more like that, which is a much fancier piece, that's an actual kimono, something that you would wear out to like a fancy dinner or a party. Your obi's going to be a lot fancier, and you're going to need a lot more things to put that on. You've noticed her footwear. They are kind of like wooden flip-flops, wooden clogs. They're called Yukata, and they're really, really traditional in the summertime. You usually don't wear socks. You don't wear tabi with yukata because it's hot out. You know, you don't wear socks with your flip-flops. And the straps on